Joined right now by Maya Ward, White House reporter for Politico, and Jeff Mason, who covers the White House for Reuters. Welcome to both of you. So, Jeff, how would you describe the president's mood over the last few days? And I'll just say, you were with him. We saw the side of you on Air Force One. I guess it must have been on Friday. So I'm curious if the tariffs and this whole issue, is he the one who is driving the tariff whiplash?
Well, first of all, to your first question, Alex, I think the president's in a very good mood. The reason I'm in this unusual spot right now is this is a pool van. We've got President Trump's golf course right behind us, and that's where the president has spent a good chunk of the day today, where he's also holding meetings. And no doubt some of those meetings are related to trade. He's felt very positive about what's been going on with his policies. We talked on Friday, as you were referencing, to the sort of upheaval in the markets. And he said that he felt that he had solved the problem in the bond market, that he thought the dollar was going to end up going up again after having come down last week because of all of this upheaval. So broadly, I would say the president feels confident and the people around him feel confident, but that confidence is not shared by people in the market. And that is also underscored by the fact that there were some different messages today, including some of what you just played from Secretary Lutnick. I think a lot of folks were expecting that there would be probably a bit of rise tomorrow because of what he said or what the exemptions were for electronics. But the fact that then he brought that back by saying those exemptions aren't going to last long is not going to be loved by investors.
But again, is Donald Trump, Jeff, is he the one driving the whiplash? Because you remember, and we spoke about this many times, for instance, during the first campaign, we would see that the last person with whom he spoke before he would go out on a stage, that was the person who really probably had the greatest influence. And he would go out and speak publicly. And there was a lot of that. Like, if you get in his ear at the right time, he's listening to you. Are there different messages that he's being advised to consider, or is this all coming from him?
You know what? I think both can be true, Alex. I mean, I wrote a story last week with a colleague about the fact that Secretary Bessent, I keep saying it's a little bit wrong. Secretary Bessent is rising within the trade team, and that's because he came down to Mar-a-Lago last week and encouraged the president to focus more on talking about deal making, and that's what led to a shift this last week about the 90-day pause. That said, you saw in Von Hilliard's clips just now, everyone from the trade team is still playing. Everyone from the trade team is still involved, from Peter Navarro to the Treasury Secretary, and all of those people are in the president's ear. So the final decision is with President Trump, and he's the one who's making it.
And were you, Maya, surprised by what we heard from Howard Lutnick today?
I mean, after what we saw last week, I would say no. I mean, to Jeff's point, yeah, we saw Secretary Bessent. I mean, he had really succeeded, as kind of this leading voice in the White House on tariff strategy, and was in, Trump's ear days before the pause saying he needed to be talking more about negotiations. And now we know he has his work cut out for him. It's going to be this major challenge, actually, working with 75 plus individual countries to try to iron out these tailored deals, all while, the fallout with China continues. And then we see, too, there are going to be additional layers to this, and the mixed messaging is going to continue. I mean, Trump has talked about last week that there are still going to be pharmaceutical tariffs. Now we have Howard Lutnick saying today on Sunday shows that, yes, there's an exemption for electronics, but things like iPhones and other electronics will still face their own special tariffs in a couple of months. So we're nowhere near close to the end of this.
What about trade advisor Peter Navarro, Maya, who defended his relationship with Elon Musk during an interview on Meet the Press? Take a listen to this.
So first of all, Elon and I are great. It's not an issue.
Even though he called you a moron and dumber than a sack of bricks?
I've been called worse. Everything's fine with Elon. And look, Elon's doing a very good job with his team with waste, fraud, and abuse. That's a tremendous contribution to America. And no man doing that kind of thing should be subject to having his cars firebombed by crazies.
Do you have a sense of who has more influence over the president right now between those two men?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to tariffs, I mean, that's definitely Peter Navarro's area. But
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of, I think a lot about with what Navarro said today, and I was thinking about, Susie Wiles' whole thing has been about no drama in Trump too, and keeping that out of the West Wing. It's a distraction, and we know her patience with Elon Musk has worn thin in the past, and so it's been interesting seeing some of this drama and chaos kind of play out in public that they've tried to avoid so far. And Navarro's brushing off was interesting, and I'm sure the way that Wiles would have wanted to see that handled.
It's interesting you bring that up. I'm going to talk with Chris Whipple, who has a book he's written on White House Chief of Staffs, the history of that. I'm going to ask him exactly all about that, so you might want to tune in about 15 minutes. But, Jeff, Senator Cory Booker is calling for Congress to investigate whether there was any insider trading when the president urged people to buy stocks just hours before his reversal on Wednesday. Here's that.
There is enough of an offense here. There's enough smoke here that should demand congressional hearings. We are a separate and equal branch of government. The Constitution lays out very clearly that Congress is not supposed to be spineless and submissive. It is supposed to hold up oversight over the president. These are real, legitimate, justifiable questions.
And in another soundbite we played from yesterday in Los Angeles, you also heard AOC, who was very strong in her condemnation of Trump's tweet about the stock market. Is the president aware of the backlash from that tweet? And is there any way to guess his intent?
Well, we did try to ask him about this in a what we call a pool spray on Friday, I think Thursday. No, it was in the cabinet room on Thursday. And a colleague of mine in the press corps asked him just as we were walking out, and he sort of shook his head or gave a frown. And so I think we took that to mean this is not something that he agrees with. But to your broader question and to the question put forth by Senator Booker, I'm sure that there are Democrats who will want to follow up on this. But, the political reality, of course, Alex, is that it's Republicans who control both the House and the Senate. So the ability for Democrats to go into investigation is going to be hindered by the fact that they're in the minority.
Absolutely. And taking a step past that, Maya, even if Congress did investigate the matter, it's doubtful the Justice Department acts, right? But could this line of attack gain any political traction?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say, Democrats' messaging since Trump has taken office has been all over the place, relatively lackluster. And critics have said, quite frankly, non-existent on some issues. And so this is the first time Democrats have appeared united. There's a little bit of energy there in terms of their messaging. And even Democrats who have vastly different thoughts on trade, we are seeing them come together here. We're going to have to see if they stick to it and continue hammering Trump. One of the double-edged swords here is when it comes to Donald Trump, the chaos and speed that comes with his administration, is a downside at times for this presidency and has been criticized. But the other reality is that, if you talk to activists and lawmakers and legal aid groups, maybe the tariffs issue is going to be different, but everyone you talk to is still overwhelmed right now, and trying to, pin down a focus when you're constantly moving on to the next big thing week after week is a major challenge.
It absolutely is. All right, Maya, Jeff, my friends, thank you so much for talking with me about all this. Appreciate it.